One of the most popular archetypes throughout art and literature is that of the chosen one. This archetype has spanned throughout history with examples dating back as far as the story of Moses in the Torah. Within a story, the chosen one is a character who is the only one capable of defeating a threat to a great population or way of living. Looking at the main conflicts within the chosen one archetype, we see a clear external conflict in the character's shadow, but we also see many internal conflicts as well. This basic idea allows for great personality and character development to be created throughout the story. Because of this advantage to the archetype, it is especially useful in a film environment where there is much less time to develop a character than in literature. Although there is a lot of room for interpretation, the chosen one archetype falls under two distinct categories. In one, a character returns to a special world with expectations from others to fill a role they do not yet belong in, and in the other, a character is thrust into the special world and appears to be the only one capable of defeating a powerful force. I will be referring to these two plots as the return and the creation, respectively. In the return, the chosen one is predestined to conquer the external conflict presented in the film. The return focuses on expectations and the character's ability to overcome the internal conflict of who they are. The creation, on the other hand, discusses the challenge of being unable to return to the ordinary world once they realize they are the only one capable of defeating the external conflict. Again, this manifests into internal conflict where the character must ask who they are, what is their purpose, and why them. Examples of the return include Harry Potter, Neo, Poe, and Aragorn from the films Harry Potter, The Matrix, Kung Fu Panda, and The Lord of the Rings. Examples of the creation include Katniss, Batman, Luke Skywalker, and Frodo from the films The Hunger Games, The Dark Knight Trilogy, Star Wars, and The Lord of the Rings. The distinction between these two plots is better understood when examining the basic plot outline of each. The return can be summarized as: nobody is called to their responsibility as a chosen one. Internal and external conflict grow as they aren't living up to the demands and expectations. This internal conflict consumes them, and they begin to fail. They are able to accept themselves as the chosen one. The chosen one defeats their shadow, who is usually the antagonist or a character who parallels the protagonist. Finally, they return to the ordinary world as the chosen one. The creation, on the other hand, can be summarized as: a nobody assumes or is forced into a demanding task and succeeds at this task. Responsibilities build because of their early success. There is a rejection of their responsibilities due to the desire to return to ordinary world. The character accepts their responsibilities and purpose as they are the only one capable of stopping the threat. The chosen one defeats their shadow, and they return to the ordinary world as the chosen one. Looking at the two basic plot outlines, we see the internal conflict the protagonist faces is either based on the responsibilities or expectations they face as the chosen one. One of the reasons this plot and conflict is so effective is that everyone deals with responsibilities and expectations in everyday life. This allows the audience to better understand and connect with the internal conflict of the protagonist despite what the scale of expectations and responsibilities may be. This idea that we are able to connect our emotions to those with entirely different lives has existed even in the Bible, which contains texts written between 3,200 and 2,000 years ago. H. Grady Davis, on the discussion of the human condition in biblical literature, writes: in contrast to the canons of classical tragedy, a person of any rank or station may experience the extremes of happiness or misery, exaltation or tragedy. This idea that anyone can experience any internal conflict and condition allows us to see how the idea of a chosen one can be effective even if we can't directly relate to the external conflicts of a character. When discussing The Chosen One, The Lord of the Rings is likely the best piece of film and literature to analyze. It is one of the few works which utilizes the creation and the return. Looking first at the creation, it is best to analyze Frodo. First off, Frodo is established as just another hobbit of the Shire until he is forced into the task of preventing the ring from falling into the hands of the enemy. Despite wanting nothing to do with it, he now has a responsibility to the ring and must protect it. Because he wants to return to ordinary life, when Frodo reaches Rivendell, he begins to reject his responsibility for the ring, as he believes that his journey is over. Once he offers his service to bring the ring to Mordor, he finally accepts his responsibility and himself as the Chosen One. Once Frodo reaches Mount Doom and defeats his shadow, Gollum, he is finally able to defeat his inner conflict about who he is. Finally, he returns to the Shire as an ordinary hobbit, although everywhere else in the ordinary world he is known as the Chosen One. Analyzing Frodo's plot, we see it follows the general outline of the creation as he faces many unwanted responsibilities and overcomes the desire to return to an ordinary life. Another character within the series who can also be categorized as Chosen One is Aragorn, who instead follows the plot of the return. Aragorn is introduced as merely a ranger and someone without much power in an ordinary world, who then takes the responsibility of leadership in battles of Helm's Deep and Minas Tirith. However, along with himself, enemies, and allies, no one sees him as a proper king, since he fails at their expectations of who the true king of Gondor should be. Because the steward of Gondor assumes the role of king, instead of handing it to him, Aragorn fails his responsibility as a leader, dividing the army of free men. Once Isildur's sword is reforged, he confronts the army of the dead, and the steward of Gondor dies. Aragorn, alongside his allies, finally accept him as king. Now fulfilling his role as king and the Chosen One, he confronts and defeats Sauron at the Black Gate, overcoming his shadow. With Sauron defeated, Aragorn is finally crowned as king and returns to a new, but ordinary life. Although the story of Aragorn isn't fully addressed until the third book and film, his character follows the same progression as the basic plot of The Return. One of the most important aspects of the Chosen One archetype is the shadow. According to Jungian philosophy, the shadow represents the irrational side of our personality which goes against our conscious ego and morals. As Carl Jung describes, the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge. Within film, the shadow is typically a character which mirrors the protagonist, showing who they could become if they succumb to their conflicts and desires. Going back to The Lord of the Rings, the best example of the shadow is Frodo's parallel in Gollum. If Frodo succumbs to the ring and fails at his responsibility, then he will fall the same as Gollum did. This clear and present parallel is a reminder to the audience and Frodo of the weight of the consequences of failure. Another great shadow in modern literature and film is Voldemort. In Harry Potter, as the books and films progress, Harry feels that he is becoming more and more like the Dark Lord, Voldemort. This internal conflict adds to the pressure Harry is under to not succumb to the expectations of others. The usage of the shadow allows for internal conflict within characters to manifest in an external form, which is especially useful to storytelling in the form of film. The shadow's purpose within the Chosen One archetype is to show how such a simple mistake, such as succumbing to one's expectations or responsibilities, will cause them to fall. When discussing the Chosen One archetype found throughout many modern films, understanding the internal conflict is essential to understanding of a character. The Chosen One is subjected to one of two main conflicts, either that of expectations or responsibilities, which is why the format is so successful throughout film and literature. No matter who you are, everyone deals with expectations and responsibilities, which is what allows the audience to easily relate to a protagonist or a character no matter what challenge they face. We may not be facing a force or being powerful enough to destroy an entire way of life, but we do still face these same internal conflicts on a daily basis. By understanding this basic idea which drives the Chosen One archetype, it is no surprise that its presence can be found throughout history from as early as the Torah to as modern as The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.